we have Rebecca Chace. Rebecca is the award-winning author of 2 novels. Yes! Rebecca is the award-winning author of 2 novels, Leaving Rock Harbor and Capture the Flag, a memoir, Chautauqua Summer, and a children's book, June Sparrow and the $1 Million Penny. She has also written 2 plays and adapted Capture the Flag for the screen, for which she won the Showtime Tony Cox Screenwriting Award at the Nantucket Film Festival. Please welcome Rebecca to the stage.
What are we going to do? We have to party. It's Becca's last night in New York.
Yeah, big party, huh?
Yeah,
hey,
it's
guys,
really
let me tape for my party.
All the exciting people we had there, all the guys, all the girls. All 3 of us. Well, why don't we put on some music?
I'll explain that in a minute. I found the box in my mother's apartment on the Upper West Side, way at the back of her closet, after she died in December of 2020. And I was really shocked because she didn't save anything. I mean, there were no little boxes of keepsakes of her 2 daughters or organized family photos. It wasn't like that. She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, she didn't have room, and she didn't save. But on the top of this box, in her handwriting, it said, Becca's Things. So I took the box down, and I opened it up, and I realized I had packed it for myself. And inside the box, there were all these weird little random things, you know, like clay dogs I'd made in 2nd grade, or a metal Band-Aid box filled with streamers and confetti from when I saw the Rolling Stones at Madison Square Garden when I was 15. And there was all of these newspapers in the box. So I knew that I had packed the box in 1978 because all of the newspapers were from 78. And then I thought, wait a minute, I've got to hold on to these newspapers too. These were all like yellow, old, crinkled up newspapers, but I took them out of the box and I put them in piles. And I realized that even though I must have just grabbed them in the neighborhood to pack up these objects in the box, I had the Times, the Voice, the Post, the Daily News. I even had this old Rolling Stone from like 1976. And I had to realize, wait a minute, that wasn't wrapping paper. That was a treasure I put in the box. And so I'm looking at all of the papers in the piles. And all of a sudden I thought, you know, this is like a triangle. It's like the box became a triangle between the objects and all the stories in the newspapers of what was happening in New York at that time, and my own memories of growing up with my mother at the apex of that triangle. My mother was a poet, Jean Valentine, and she was a wonderful poet, but she was more of a writer than a mother. And the 70s were not really, they weren't an easy decade for her, or really for anybody I knew who were mostly the children of writers and artists like me. Then I found a reel-to-reel tape in the box. And I thought, you know, this could be empty. I could have picked it up at a flea market and just thought it was something cool. But it turned out that it was a recording of me and my friends hanging out and partying and playing music at my mother's apartment. And it was so wild listening to this tape because obviously we forgot that the tape recorder was on. And we must have just put it on for a joke or something, for something to do. And in some ways, listening to this tape, we're just like bored teenagers anywhere, right? We're just hanging out, wishing we were at a real party, running out of cigarettes, wishing we had more cigarettes. And then in another way, it just had to be, it's very specific to this time and place, to the New York where I grew up. Then I found a Brownie camera in the box from when I was a little kid. And I didn't know if the camera worked, but I got some black and white film, and I loaded the camera, and I went down to the village, and I started taking pictures of all the places where me and my friends used to hang out when we were teenagers. And the Brownie works like a champ. And not only that, but the pictures it takes, they look like they were taken in the 70s. So it was like the camera became some kind of weird portal. And this is when the story gets actually kind of surreal. Because in December, my beloved sister-in-law, Susan, died. And after she died, one of her nieces, Lakshmi, invited us, a small group of family and friends, to her apartment on the Upper West Side to gather. And as soon as I saw Lakshmi's address, I was like, okay, I know exactly where that is. That's the apartment where we were, that's the apartment building where I lived with my mother, where we made that party tape. So I go to the building, and of course, it's a little fancier than when I lived there with my mom, but the architecture's all the same. And when I got out of the elevator, I realized that Lakshmi's apartment, where I'd never been, was in the exact same line as the apartment where I lived with my mom. So now Lakshmi, she'd done a renovation. So the apartment didn't look anything like our old place, but I told her, it's so weird. I'm back in this building, and actually, you live in the same line as the apartment I lived in when I was a teenager. And she said, well, we only moved up here a month ago. We used to live in the apartment right downstairs. And it's for sale, but it's empty now, and we never did any renovations to that apartment. So I just looked at her and said, can I come over tomorrow with my brownie camera? Walking into that apartment where it was essentially unchanged, it basically blew the top of my head off. I mean, there was my mother's bedroom. There was the bedroom that I shared with my sister. There was the kitchen where I used to have to close my eyes when I turned on the light and count to 10 so the roaches would have time to scatter. There was the living room where I hung out with my friends and where we made the party tape. Have you ever been working on something and all of a sudden it's like everything around you starts to just line up and signal to you in some undeniable way? It's like when you get a puppy, and all of a sudden there are puppies everywhere, and you never saw puppies around before. Well, this was like a freight train. It was like the universe just grabbed me by the shoulders and was saying, pay attention. And I've always avoided writing about my mother. I mean, she was brilliant and complicated, and it wasn't easy to grow up with someone who had absolutely no talent for mothering. But she taught me so much about words and language. So a couple of weeks after I went to the apartment, I went up to Boston to visit my aunt, my mother's sister. And my cousin has also been going through her parents' papers and boxes, because this is what we have to do now. We have to take care of them, and then we have to sort through their stuff. And so she hands me a handwritten copy of a poem that my mother had written for me when I was 14. And I knew about this poem because it was published in the New Yorker, and then it was later collected into one of her books. And I always loved this poem, and I was so glad she'd written a poem for me. And as some of you know, after somebody dies, their handwriting, something in their hand, written in their own hand, is so moving and precious. So I was really glad to have it. And later that night, I was upstairs in the bedroom, and I was looking at the poem and reading it over. And then I realized, that poem had to have been written when we were living in that apartment, which means that my mom was sitting at that kitchen table in front of that kitchen window when she wrote it out. And not only that, but she was writing it out to give as a birthday present to her mother, my grandmother, who makes my mother look like a walk in the park. So I don't really know what's going to happen with this work I'm making right now between the objects in the box, the newspaper articles, the brownie camera, the teenage reel-to-reel tape. It's all a work in progress. But now I have a title, Becca 14, which is the name of the poem my mom wrote for me. And so I think I'll close by reading you that poem. Becca 14 by Jean Ballantyne. Squat, slant-eyed, speaking in phrase-book phrases, the messenger says he is your brother and settles down on his heels to wait, muffled in flat, supple skin, rope over his shoulder. You wait, play, turn, forget. Years, years. The messenger is both like the penguin who sits on the nest of pebbles and the one who brings home pebbles to the nest's edge in his beak, one at a time, and also like the one who is lying there, warm, who is going to break out soon, becoming yourself. The messenger is growing strong, tough feet for land, and strong wings for the water, and long, butter-yellow feather eyebrows for looks, and will speak calmly, words you already know, thread, island, must. Now, slowly, just while you lie on your cot there, half dozing, not reading, watching the trees, a summer and a summer, writing long pages, tearing them up. Lying there under the close August window, while at your back, the water-lit, dotted lines of home start coloring in.